Hi there, my name is Brian. I'm an instructor at Assiniboine Community College and I teach courses on public speaking. I was asked to take a look at some of the 4-H presentation materials and just offer a few tips to help parents prepare kids for presentations. So let's take a look. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do to prepare for a speech is I'm going to come to the 4h.mb.ca website, scroll down a little bit, and there's information about regular speeches and visual presentations. So take a quick look at the regular speeches here. It's just a PDF. You can download it or print it off. There is a lot of good information in here actually. And I don't get very far before I see here the rule of three. And that just basically means your speech is going to have an introduction, a middle, and a close. And that's great. That's exactly what I would do. And they have some good information here about choosing a topic. I think I'll just add a few tips to what they've said here, although this is all good. So for example, let's say I have a dog and I've taken it to a vet once and it had an operation. And that's an interesting topic. It's a good topic because I know a lot about it. I was there, I experienced it. But sometimes we just tell it like a straight up story. And we tell the story of how we took our dog to the vet. Good speeches, interesting speeches, need to be arguable or disagreeable. People need to be able to disagree with what you're saying. And so if you just tell us the story of how you took your dog to the vet, nobody can disagree with you. Nobody can say, no, you didn't take it to the vet. No, it didn't get that number of stitches. And so you need to change your speech and talk about something like, what's the best way to take care of a dog after an operation? Or how do you help your dog have a positive experience at the vet? And yes, you can tell parts of your story, but people can then disagree with your speech and it gets them to think. I guess another way of looking at it is about research. So you need to be able to research a topic more. If you just tell me the story about you and your dog at the vet, I can't further research your story, unless maybe you have pictures on Facebook, and that's really not enough. I need to be able to research it more, and so again, changing that speech to you're teaching and you're informing. Here's how to take care of a dog, or here's how to help a dog have a good experience. Then I can research that more and I can disagree with it. Another one often is holidays. People will talk about how they, had a fabulous time in Hawaii and they did these fabulous things like they swam with sharks or they, looked at a volcano. Same idea. I need to be able to research that topic or at least disagree with you. And so you would say, instead of my trip to Hawaii, you would say, here's a top vacation spot on earth and why. And so then you could explain why Hawaii is a good vacation spot, but people can disagree with you. And yes, you can add your story. You should add story and example. But the whole topic is not just about your story. You're trying to teach and inform and have your story support it. So that's my little bit of advice for choosing a topic. I would give the rest of this document a really good thorough reading. It has a lot of great information in there about voice and body language. I do want to talk a little bit about all of this, the voice and the body language and all that stuff. Most often you can do a really good job in this area just by how you design your cue sheet. And most people do use cue notes or a sheet, and so we'll talk quickly about that. This is probably an example of the most common, cue notes. And so let's say I'm talking about Arabian horses, and my second topic is about their origins. And on our cue notes, we have things written out in full sentences. Did you know there are rock paintings and ancient works of art of Arabian-looking horses? Some of these early paintings date back 3,500 years and were found in Egypt and the Middle East. Many scholars believe the Arabian breed is one of the oldest horse breeds in the world. So great, there's my speech on my notes, and it's somewhat interesting. The problem when we write out our speeches word for word in full sentences is that we begin to read it sentence by sentence, and we have a reading voice when we do that. I don't know if you heard it when I was reading, but it sounds different than the voice I'm using right now, which is just a natural speaking voice. And so my encouragement is to not write a speech out in full sentences. I know some people have no choice but to do that, for whatever reason, they're too nervous or whatever, and that's fine if you have to do it. But if you can, I would move away from full sentences. It starts helping your voice sound more natural instead of like a reading voice. Secondly, when we start reading off our cue sheets, oftentimes, especially if we get nervous, we'll look down at our cue sheet and not look up again. We'll just keep looking down the whole time and just read right through it. Also, it's really easy to get lost. Like right now, if I'm looking up and I'm talking and I kind of have my sentences memorized and then I forget what I'm supposed to say and I look down, it might take me a little time to find my spot when things are written out in full sentences. So an alternative might be something like this, where I have the same size cue card, but I've added major words, maybe even pictures, and if I can learn the flow of my cue card, it'll help me not to have a reading voice. It'll help me look up a lot more. And so I can imagine myself looking up at the audience and just saying, the next thing I'd like to talk to you about, and I would strongly use those transition words that the audience is familiar with, the next thing or the second thing, another thing. It helps the audience get back on track. So the second thing I'd like to talk about is where Arabian horses originated. And just looking at my cue card, if I get lost, I can look down, but most of the time I can look up and just say, Arabians have been around for a very long time. In fact, there's pictures of them carved into walls. And if I get lost, I forget the year, for example, I can look down and see some of these paintings are 3,000, and I can look back up and keep talking, and I'm flipping back and forth between my card and what I'm saying, and it's a very natural way to present. And again, I don't have that reading voice. And so maybe the third topic is about Arabian Care. But even just a glance at my cue card, I know I have 3 major topics underneath Arabian Care: environment, food, and health. And I have major ideas underneath those subtopics. So I can talk naturally about the environment. I don't have to look at my cue card and just say, Arabian horses need lots of space to run and play. They love open areas. They don't like to be in stalls, tied up in stalls very much. Arabian horses love toys to play with, and maybe you can talk about and describe some of the toys that you have at home. And then move on to the next thing, food, and they talk about alfalfa and oats and things that they eat. And then if you have a funny story, you don't have to write out the story word for word. You can naturally just tell the story, the funny story about how it knocked over the food bucket or whatever your story is. Again, on to health. You can talk about the vaccines. Go ahead and write them down on your cue sheet if you're going to forget those big words, if they have a hereditary whatever problem. But then if you have a funny story, you don't have to write that story out. There's a real good chance you could tell me the story right now when the vet came out and there was a problem or whatever. And so you just need those reminders on the cue sheet, and I really do think that it helps quite a bit with these expectations that we have about voice and body language and all of those things. So that's really where I would start. If you're going to do a visual presentation really quickly, I'll just show you some things about images. So let's say we're going to look up Arabian horses. We'll come to Google and we'll just type in Arabian horses. And then we click on images, and we instantly see tons of images of Arabian horses. And so if I take my cursor and hover over images, it shoots out these little numbers at the bottom. That's the resolution. So this is 324 by 373. Go to the next one. Now I'm into the thousands. So obviously the thousands is a better picture than the 300s. So I'm already going to look for some of these pictures with a higher resolution. Up in the thousands is really helpful. And so even when I click on one, let's say I click on this second one where I'm up in the thousands, the image that pops up is not actually the original image where I have the 1000 by 1000 resolution. So a lot of people right now will just right click and copy this image. Don't do that. Don't actually copy and paste images into your presentations. What you need to do is get to the original size. So if I come over here, I can see where it says view the image, and I click on that. Now I'm at the largest example of this image, and now I would right click and save this image. And then when I go into my presentation, I would insert image instead of copying and pasting. This is the only way to get the original image at that highest quality. If you need to know anything else about PowerPoint, you really need to just go onto YouTube and Google whatever, and there's multitudes of videos to help you along there. I hope this video helped, and good luck with your presentations.